Is that a word, intersectionality? Okay, I did say something right.
It's a word that's quite fashionable now.
I was very aware of my difference, around the people that I was with in my childhood, in my church.
I'm the only gay in the village. I want to be the only Aboriginal gay man in your friendship circle, so you're not allowed to have anyone else.
But I was still able to have that little community of people.
I grew up one of those kind of Aboriginal Christians, You don't get a name like Wesley James Enoch by accident, it's built in there. And this whole idea of having to negotiate the church, being Aboriginal, being gay, was this weird kind of in and out and around. It's interesting then when I was growing up and I was coming out, the idea of being almost like people would say, just choose one. Just choose one. You don't have to be all of them all the time. And I was going, yeah, but what about and how about? And this idea that you've only got so much political currency, where do you want to spend it? Do you want to spend it on gay? Do you want to spend it on Aboriginal? Do you want to spend it on Reformed Christian? But that whole idea of being First Nations, being Aboriginal in this country is a really important thing for me, and that's what I kind of spent a lot of my energy on.
And do you feel like you've had to prioritise one over the other?
I've always felt that I've had limited time, limited energy, and a sense of focus. Actually, the arts were a really important fit for me, that telling Aboriginal stories, being an Aboriginal theatre maker in this case, was really important and trumped almost everything else.
When I sort of think about intersectionality, I think we all are at intersections in some way. My intersection is that I'm trans and that I am black. I have colour. And, you have to navigate both of them simultaneously. It's a double-edged sword as well, because you're doubly exotic. And you can become objectified and sexualized.
I think being queer and also a person of colour comes with the unique challenge of fighting two things at the same time sometimes, because sometimes I can never really be sure whether what I'm experiencing is homophobia or just racism, where some of the comments I encounter online sometimes marry both of them together and then they're both homophobic and racist. And that's something I've kind of been encountering in some shape or form almost all my life.
Racism came first, of course, because I was born with colour, and transitioning came later. And so that was hurdles later. But both of them are still painful, They're still weapons of vilification and hate. And there are nuances for both. There is racism, which is much less than it was when I was growing up. Racism now is far more silent because it's illegal to be racist now. But that was definitely an intersectionality that I had to cope with. There was racism, not just in the broader community, but also within the trans community. There was great racism, and within the gay community. And then being trans, I had to navigate, in a world that the world didn't want me to exist. I had to sort of navigate that. So it was there were double barriers to that I had to overcome. I think I overcame them beautifully. I don't know about you, but I think that also leads to privilege, right?
I think, the first times is definitely just being a kid, dealing with being ethnic and having ethnic family and then feeling that I'm queer and knowing that I'm queer, but, you know, my environment, you know, wasn't supportive of that. That was definitely like my first memories.
The first time I remember having to really navigate the fact that I was queer, coming from the childhood that I came from, that being Samoan Tongan, religious, very limited in terms of conversations around just identity in general. I think it was in primary school when I wanted to play netball for the netball team. Having to have that conversation with my father, you know, it was probably one of the first times that I literally had to go figure out a way to communicate with him in a way that he would understand it from a sporting perspective, rather than it being about me being with women and girls and playing sports with people that I actually enjoy being around, if that makes sense.
A radio program manager said to me he's not sure if Australia is ready for a gay Asian pop star. I find it really confronting because I already didn't see people who look like me in media, and growing up, I didn't have a queer Asian role model to look up to, and then to hear that, it was quite upsetting. And I remember questioning whether or not I still wanted to do music.
You know, I was quite, you know, visibly a person of color at that time, but I was also visibly Muslim at that time. And I feel like when I went into the queer space of my college campus or my university campus, I feel like I wasn't automatically accepted. Like there was a lot of needless aggression towards my family for not being accepting of me, and a lot of judgment for me being okay with that. You know, they were like, I can remember someone saying, how can you still talk to them? You know, they don't accept you for being gay. You know, if they're not like marching in the streets for you and being proud of you, then they don't deserve to be a part of your life, and you should like leave them behind. I knew that I was Arab and Muslim way before I knew I was queer and trans, you know? There is a part of my identity that I've had to, you know, deal with since birth. You know, whether it's from being aware of it in really positive spaces, like, you know, growing up with my family and having really good food, but then also like, you know, having really big wedding parties and really big celebrations, you know, celebrating Eid and Ramadan with my family. Like those are all really important cultural holidays to me, and religious holidays as well. And for me as a queer person, but also as a person of color, it was really hard for me to reconcile with that statement and with that kind of opinion, because what it meant to me to leave my family behind was to like leave a part of myself behind, and quite a big part of myself as well, like my culture, my heritage, you know, everything that makes me would have been severely damaged if I had just completely left everything behind in the dust the way that they kind of expected me to. I think the first time I truly connected with a person who was from my exact background and who was also queer was when I met my girlfriend. And she was really special in the sense that she loved being Lebanese, and she loved being like, you know, everything that I had, like, even though I didn't want to leave everything behind, for a long time I tried to. And it was really difficult for me to forget about everything. But when I met my girlfriend, it's like she kind of woke up that part of me that had been in hibernation for so long, that part that loved being Arab and loved being Muslim.
When I was a baby queer and I started like going on dating apps, I matched with someone who was quite similar to how they identify to how I identify now. And even though we only went on a few dates, seeing in person that someone like me is out there made me feel a bit more secure in myself.
The first trans woman of colour I met was my trans mother, and she was Maori. And, you know, I come from a remarkable lineage. Her trans mother is also Maori, and her name was Carmen Rupe. and she was a very famous trans woman from New Zealand who ran for Lord Mayor of Wellington. So, you know, we're from a lineage of very provocative and controversial and strong trans women.
So the first queer and Asian person that I really connected with was this renowned, legendary photographer, William Yang. See, I've always felt so alone as someone who identifies as queer and Asian, and to meet someone like William who has been in the scene for so long, and he showed me all these photographs of like the gay and lesbian Asian movement from like the 80s that he was involved with, was so powerful to see that, you know, that intersectionality has existed for so long and we're still part of it, but we've always been there.
Just being online, for sure, like the more I posted and like, you know, as my like following grew and, you know, I had certain people I recognized were commenting very like often, and they were always just like they feel like my little family of like support that support me no matter like what I've brought up with them, whether I talk about my like autism or whether I talk about growing up queer in an ethnic household and being non-binary, dealing with like clothing, all of that stuff. Like I can always like go there and talk to them. Most of the time it's not safe in your real environment to be open or to learn or ask questions or anything. So I think the internet is actually very, very important for people that, you know, they have somewhere that is safe. And sometimes it's even not safe for them to go on the internet because the only way they can go on the internet is on their family computer or within the restriction of like, you know, a parent watching over. So it's still even hard in that case, which is why it is important to have like access to internet.
I think the first time I really celebrated the positives and felt appreciated and embraced was watching Drag Race and seeing the documentary Paris is Burning. I think they instilled in me a deep appreciation for what it means to be both queer and Black, because there's so much culture there that is really beautiful and fun and joyful. And when I started watching Drag Race, I was instantly transported, you know, into the sewing room, into the challenges, into the like songs and dance and the way that drag queens express themselves, but especially Black drag queens.
For most POC communities, like within the 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, when to be queer but also to be of color, there's like two crosses to your name. So when most people that were kicked out of home, they created these houses, you know, where one person would play house mother, and they would have like a actual house where they would, you know, love each other, keep each other safe, feed each other, and sort of create a chosen family. And so the House of Kong started 7 years ago when I first started drag, and initially it was just about creating a safe space, a literal safe space for people that were kicked out of home, and it grew from having 6 kids in my first year to now about 38 children that I kind of like mentor, look out for. You know, one of them graduates this year, which is amazing. But these houses are literal chosen families that, you know, reinforce for queer people, trans people, that they are important and that they are deserving of love.
The first time I felt like my intersectional identities were celebrated was at West Ball, which is like this ballroom event in Western Sydney. Like that's where I felt like being queer and being a person of colour were not just things that were like, okay, yeah, this is a great combo. It's like, this is a fantastic combo. This is an amazing combo. We can reach a level that people can only dream of through these intersections that we have. Like, I really love that. Like, I feel like the vibe of West Ball is so much about just being unapologetically yourself. You know, it's an amazing space to be a part of because, you know, there's the music that plays is not just like the traditional like stuff you hear on the radio. You know, there's like influence from all cultures, you know, depending on the DJ, depending on the performance. But there's such a real feeling of kinship with everyone in that room.
I think the first time I felt like my identities, all of them under the umbrella that is Queen Kong, was embraced was probably the Logie nomination. And the Logies are obviously the Australian version of like the Emmys or the Golden Globes. Like it's our TV's big night. And so being the first drag queen to be nominated for an award, you know, at the Logies after 63 years, that was one of the moments where I went, okay, we're being recognized, we're being seen. You know, it might feel a little bit tokenistic, but for the most part, just being in the room for the first time, it means that there's a door being opened, you know, for more people to come. And so, yeah, seeing my drag kids and also the ballroom community who came to watch me or came to the hotel room to have drinks to celebrate, seeing the way that they saw me in that moment, knowing that it was possible for them, that was the moment where I went, cool, the work's good and it's speaking for itself.
I didn't want to travel with a male name on my passport, and so I went to Fiji and I requested a female name, and it was really difficult. No one wanted to give me a female name, and my family stood behind me, and with the lawyers and my family's support, the government, I think, was so shocked that they gave me a female name just to get me out of the country. We're not sure if I was the first in the Pacific, but I could be. We'll find that out in due course. The Powerhouse Museum have just accepted my passport as a part of the Pacifica collection, which is good. At least I know it's safe and sound now.
I remember the first time I felt truly celebrated being queer and Asian was during Sydney World Pride, because I had created a queer Asian cabaret show which was sold out across the entire Pride season. And I created the event and I managed to bring artists from all across Australia. We had, you know, queer Asian artists from Melbourne, Brisbane, and Canberra travel to join the lineup in Sydney, which I believe it's like truly a historic event in queer Sydney history. I remember sitting down when it was all over to take it all in, because you're just so used to like working and you're on stage and you're hosting, and then I would perform, I would sing. It's non-stop, but I remember like taking a moment to breathe and taking it all in, that I created all of that. Everyone who attended experienced that it was because of me, and it was only at the time like people were, you know, some people cried, and especially like queer Asians who might not have been in spaces like that, you know, and folks who sometimes feel like they're not queer enough, they're not Asian enough, or they're too queer or too Asian, and they felt comfortable attending my event. And I felt really appreciated to get that kind of response. It just made me really proud of being queer and Asian.
The first time I went to Mardi Gras, and that first float, that Aboriginal float comes out, and there's a sense of that in this environment, being Aboriginal and queer is accepted. You know, that's only, 3-4 years ago. Like, it was really, it's late to be thinking that, but where it's something that can coexist. Being black, being Aboriginal and being gay can coexist in spaces. I've just not ever seen that very much. To be honest, I felt very embarrassed that I hadn't been part of that world, or hadn't sought that out, or hadn't. I felt really kind of ashamed, and seeing that kind of collision opened my eyes and made me think, oh man, you just, not self-hate, but a little bit kind of like you missed opportunity. You've missed something. You've missed something because you're too busy trying to protect yourself from things. You know, there's images I've seen now of friends of mine who've then kind of marched at Mardi Gras and did this bloody Captain Cook thing and did a whole range of things. And I'm going to go, oh, Jesus Christ. It's been there all the time. But for some reason, my mind didn't let that come together. Didn't let that happen. This is like therapy.
I'll send you a bill after the interview.
Excellent, can't wait.
I think we all have our own intersections of our identities. Maybe these identities aren't as marginalized, but intersectionality still exists, and I wish people were more willing to put themselves into someone else's shoes, and also just accepting that sometimes you can't relate to an experience, but that doesn't mean that it's not valid.
Don't expect people to provide you with the answers and for people to do all the work. You should do your own homework sometimes, right?
I do think the first step is to listen to us, like it is to listen to queer people of colour talk about their experiences and understand what our needs are and what we want to see more from the spaces that are supposed to be for us as well.
I feel like it's so easy for people to just and even I do this, I'm always just when people ask for advice or they're telling me about something they're dealing with, I'm so ready to give that oh, you should try this, you should do this. And I'm really trying to practice sitting there, let them talk it through, because half the time they'll talk it through and they will get to the point themselves if you just let them talk. Yeah, just creating a safe space for people to be open, somewhere they can go to talk about that thing if they don't have that at home or within their friends.
When we say amplify the voices of people of color, queer people, how can you amplify the voices of these communities or these marginalized communities at that when you don't see what they're doing day to day? Outside of Pride Month and Mardi Gras, which is once a year, as artists, as leaders, we're doing this daily. So follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, see the content that we create so that you understand, where our next show is, where the next meeting is, whether, what you can sort of support and what you can amplify. It's really huge, TikTok, and everyone's on their phone. So make sure you add us to that feed so you can be aware with what's coming up.